What up? What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the pod. You joining us now for just checking in. It is everybody's favorite uncle, Uncle Don Don, and I'm joined by my good brother Paul, aka Mr. Qualified. Go ahead, introduce yourself again.
Per usual, Mr. Qualified. It's your boy. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, we here.
I'm happy for you to be here. I even pulled out a new shirt for you.
This is new. I was wondering, it looks new.
It is very new and more fitted than I had anticipated. I had tried it on yesterday. I just saw it and I was like, "Oh, Whitney, how will I know
You can
if it fits?" So, yeah, no, shout out to one of the greatest Leos that ever lived next to me, my mama, and Obama. That's a good top four, though. Wait, me, my mama, and Obama, that's a bar. Like, I need to just drop this microphone and just walk off. But you throw in Whitney, that's a nice top four for Leos.
you're not you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
But I digress. What's up?
That's what I need to ask you, man. I feel like the last two episodes, you done checked in on me and I done gave some major life updates, but I feel like I ain't really asked you what's going on. So let me check in with you, big bruh. How you I'm so unserious. No, but what is new in life for you though?
Ooh, what isn't new in life? I feel like it's good. My credit score is new. I'm in a new threshold. I think I have mentioned that
Yeah.
before. Um, but then I got the official notice of where my credit score is, and God is pleased.
That's all we
Yeah,
can
man.
ask for. That's all we can
God,
ask for.
God is pleased. But no, man, I really have been good. I am tired today, but in a good way. I got like 3, maybe 4 hours of sleep because adult bodies just wake up at 7 in the morning,
Mhm.
which means I was up late, but that's fine. Like I'm doing nothing, scrolling when I should have been asleep. But I woke up with a case of the zoomies. I went to the gym, got a good workout in, um, which is maybe why this shirt is a little fitted. No, I'm lying. But no, I got a good workout in, ran some errands, came back, cooked, cleaned, what she say, washed everything.
These references are killing me right
Right?
now.
That's my lack of sleep brain right there. But no, for real, I'm great. When people ask, like, "Oh, how you doing?" You say good by default, or just keep the conversation going. But the last few people are like, "Oh, well, how is life?" I'm like, man, I really cannot complain. Like that's always my default answer. Like, I can't complain, but I really be complaining. Um, I cannot complain, and it scares the hell out of me that I cannot complain because everything is kind of, I won't say easy, but like copacetic right now. It's maintaining, it's all these things. And I haven't been in this space in this season for a very long time, if at all. So I'm like, okay, where's the clock? Where's the timer? Like some weird shit about to happen, but I'm good.
Yeah, no, I was gonna ask about that last part in particular because I would say even since you've joined the podcast, I feel like every time that's been referenced or every time it's came up, you pretty much said, no, I'm pretty straight right now. Like I ain't got no complaints. But to what you mentioned, being there, if it's the first time you've been there, if you haven't been there, in a while, you mentioned kind of like waiting for the other shoe to drop. uh, why does it feel outside of that, or if you could go more into that, why does it feel so scary, for lack of a better word, that you are at a place that feels so solid right now? Like, does it not feel like a good foundation? Do you feel like anything that happens might be a regression more so than you just have plateaued here for a little bit? Like, just kind of, I've always wondered if there's another, to have a better understanding of what that kind of like fear kind of feels like when you've reached that point that you're talking about.
I haven't even plateaued. That's the crazy part. I'm waiting to move up, but I haven't plateaued, you know? So it's weird because it is a bit fear. I mean, we talked about anxiety before, but like up until this point, I feel like talking about being riddled with anxiety, I have just been used to and accustomed to making it work, having to get by, having to scrape, having to figure this out, having to do these things. And I'm not even all talking about financially. It's just, very much Goldilocks. Like go into this, try this, ooh, piece of candy, ooh, piece of candy. Like I've not really in my adult life had the conscious space to breathe.
Mm,
I mean, I feel like in my early 20s, I was breathing because I didn't know I was living, right? But now I have the conscious space to breathe. And it feels good that I'm not drowning. It feels good that I'm not overwhelmed all the time. Although March was spreading me a little thin because I added a whole bunch of projects. But like outside of that, the grand scheme of things, I'm breathing for the first time, and I'm like, wow, is this what your lungs are supposed to do?
that's that's a bar. I don't know, that hit because I do feel like we've talked about this, like me nearing the end of my 20s, and you spoke about like that first era of your 30s and how there is no, like, people talk about 30 because that's the milestone age for our era, if you will.
Mhm.
But 30 really is a new beginning more than it is a other side of the hill, if you will. So when you talk about not even realizing you were living, like, you're worried about so much. I know, like, I've been worried about so much in my 20s that when I look back on it, a lot of it hasn't been me realizing, bro, this is all life that you're supposed to experience. There are moments in here that you're supposed to enjoy. All moments aren't enjoyable, all the time, but it's not just supposed to be strife all the way until you get everything figured out, quote unquote. But with that, um, as you look back, like being where you are now, as you look back, how are you feeling about the journey to get to this place of I feel good? Like, do you feel like you can I feel like I know this answer from you. Maybe you don't feel like, oh, I can rest. But how does it feel to, maybe, like you said, be able to breathe and be a bit more relaxed and operating, knowing you're still striving upward, but there may not feel that pressure of like, okay, well, I gotta get here though before I can be comfortable, or I gotta get here before I can feel maybe content with the direction that I'm going. Those are more so my words, not yours, but just more so that journey piece of how you got to where you're saying you are.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna use my credit cards as an example. I was in a lot of credit card debt for a number of reasons. One of them, what?
I was gonna say, you said you was swallowed up in debt on the last episode.
I was okay. I had a couple of cards, but the one I always reference is my largest one. And at one point prior to the pandemic, it was about $14,000 on that one card, which is a lot of money, right? But through the pandemic, I had got that down to like 4,000, and I was like, oh, okay, that is a significant jump. And then I bought a house, and well, I paid it off to buy a house, and then I bought a house, and then it went back up to 13, and I was like, well, damn, that was pointless. And I just, on top of other things that I was having to pay for, I was just like severely behind, overwhelmed, feeling like I'm making payments, but it's not getting me anywhere. So it just felt like I was kind of chasing my tail with that one. And at some point, I was at about like 73% usage on a credit card. For those that are not familiar, well versed with like credit cards, you should generally be under 30% to kind of keep yourself afloat when possible. I was at 73, 74. So I say all that to say, like, I was in a cycle, like, I gotta pay this off, I gotta be at zero, I gotta do this. I'm not making any movements because I'm still seeing so many digits, on this statement. Um, but then I did the math the other day, knowing that it's super low. It's like 2,000 right now. Um, I'm at like 1% usage. So in my head, I'm like, oh, I gotta pay $2,000 off. But 2,000 compared to where I was, my minimum balance just dropped. But I keep feeling like I'm in this cycle to have to get to zero on everything, even beyond finances, in order to have a fresh restart. So I think last month was the first time that I realized, like, you can enjoy a little bit. You can do some things, you can treat yourself to stuff that you wouldn't normally because all of my immediate attention, all of my immediate money, all of my immediate resources was going to something or somebody. So to kind of sit still, I don't do well with idle time. I don't do well with silence. I don't do well with empty. And that's kind of what it feels like, but in a good way because it's fresh, it's still, it's we can do something else. So yeah, I'm trying to train myself and my brain to think about that. And shout out to therapy. Um, because we talked about that quite a bit. And she's like, "You seem a lot better than a year and a half ago when we met. Like you look different." And I'm like, "Thank you. I feel different." So
There is a lot to unpack in what you just said. I feel like there's three things I want to pull out. I just hope that I remember them all. But to the most recent thing you said, it's always funny when somebody else kind of gives you, especially when it's maybe unexpected, but when you get that perspective of somebody saying, hmm, you seem different. You look different. Because I just had that experience recently where somebody was like, what's been going on this year with you? You feel something's different about you this year. And for me, I think I felt better because I knew that I felt that difference internally. And you never really kind of operate hoping or thinking that, oh, well, I hope other people see this or I hope other people notice this difference. Because especially once you get to a point where you realize that that change is for you, you just aren't, or ideally, you aren't as worried about the external opinions. But especially when it's people that care about you or people that have seen you in different phases, when they point that out, it's always somewhat of a morale booster. At least I, saw it as that. So it was interesting that you just said that. You also mentioned being able to treat yourself. When was the first time that you kind of felt like, man, I owe myself? Like, when's the first time you actually thought, like, man, I owe myself this, or I owe it to myself to enjoy this moment and not be so worried about taking care of business or having everything handled, so to speak?
in life or
Yes,
in
in life.
um
I'm assuming it's not super early. So I guess that's more so also the perspective I'm asking from. I'm assuming it happened maybe somewhat well into adulthood where it was really like, no, I really do owe myself. So I ain't trying to have you go that far back in the time machine, but
oh, it ain't that far back because I will be honest and say, and not to get all zodiac on you, but like as a Leo, I am respectfully full of myself. I think I'm great. I think I look great. I think I produce great things. Like I think that is just my person. So I own that. But the irony to that is I don't treat myself,
mm,
you know? So it's just like you would think that somebody that feels that way and speaks highly of themselves, like they treat themselves. I don't because I feel like I have operated most of my life in a deficit or at least deficit perspective. And I'm not saying like, woe is me and grew up without X, Y, and Z. Like I had a great upbringing. I had all the things I needed that were necessities, right? But I still have always felt a little behind the eight ball because I talked about being a late bloomer with stuff. But I don't really treat myself. So I think the first time that I really treated myself and not like a purchase or something like that was quitting my job.
mm,
When I left Mizzou, that was the first treat for myself. And that was forced. That wasn't a willing quit.
mm,
My time had come, yes. But I think that was the first time that I had treated myself or tried to. And then it's been little things along the way. Like a couple weeks ago, I took off work. I took a day off. I don't take days off.
mm,
Like unless I'm sick, and that warrants that, or there's a planned vacation. Other than that, I'm a workhorse. I go to work, I do what I'm supposed to do, and I just dial in because I'm like, oh no, I don't want to just waste a day. I could use that for something more meaningful. Um, I am the most meaningful thing in my life, barring like family relationship, like that kind of thing, obviously. But like, I'm the most meaningful thing. So to take 4 hours, 8 hours of time to give to myself, like that was a treat, and it felt good, like because it's not something I would do. And that I'm what 33 now. it took me all of those years to take a day off. Huh? So, mhm.
Yeah, no, that's real. I mean, I'm assuming you probably agree, but we could group that in self-care, really, for the most part, which I think obviously has just become more prevalent and more relevant, in recent years. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. I definitely can relate to the aspect of like, I mean, whether that be professionally, but just the self-care aspect in general, because I feel like I didn't start treating myself until I removed myself from situations that I knew I was fighting for a good cause, but that weren't really serving me.
Hmm.
Or I knew that I wanted to make the best of the situation. And that's just in all aspects. It's happened personally, it's happened professionally, it's happened with friends, it's happened like with partners. So it's not one specific area, but it's more so the idea that I think I had it really bad where I just always assumed that I was not the prize. Right. I always assumed that I was lucky to be in said situation, in said environment, with said opportunity, whatever the case may be, to the point where when it was clear that things weren't, benefiting me, I'm just like, well, how can I complain? Like, I didn't even think I would have this. And you don't realize it's a treat to yourself until you are kind of removed from it and you like, ooh, it was only gonna get worse if I stayed, in that space. So yeah, treating yourself by putting yourself first might be the biggest thing anybody kind of owes to themselves to do. And I think it takes a lot of people a while to be able to confidently do it, especially when it comes to like professional spaces. But when people get there, I think that's a large pivot for a lot of people. I think I'm more so like knee deep in that space currently. But yeah, it's a big moment for sure.
And hearing you say that, and we talk about treating ourselves and we're the prize and all of these things, like for viewers out there, we sprinkle this obviously with humility. So don't get that twisted. But to treat yourself, I think for it to be effective, has to be guilt-free. You can't say like,
Mhm.
"Oh, I'm gonna treat myself to dinner today." Like well, you have to eat. Like, yes, is that a treat? Yeah, sure. We can talk about that. Like, oh, I'm gonna go get a pedicure. You could treat yourself by doing for yourself, but you have to do that guilt free. You can't be like, oh, I'm gonna go get this pedicure and I'm gonna treat myself. Then you leave there and be like, damn, I really should put that $40 to something else. Like, or this took away from something else. Like, no, if you are treating yourself, it has to be done in a way that is guilt free. And that is where I am now. And it's a certain level of, some people would say selfishness. I think a few years ago, maybe five plus, I would have been like, oh, I'm selfish now. I'm going to invest in myself. I'm gonna do all of these things. But it's really less of selfishness and more of self-preservation. Because if not, you're gonna Thanos snap your ass up out of here. So you have to figure out how to preserve yourself. You do that by focusing on yourself, which means that you will have sprinkles of selfishness in that. As long as you can do that with balance, which I think is what I've been doing and why I feel good. Like I got my first facial ever 3 weeks ago, and I was just like, why not? Like let's really. And I also have been sick, and some other things was going on, so that was something that was a treat to myself because I've never actively physically invested in like my health and wellness in that way. I was like, why not? You have the money, like go and do it. So that's been cool, but I didn't think anything else about it because that was guilt free for me.
Yeah. No, that's very real and that's very important, very vital. With that though, is there anything that you're is there anything that you're still guilty about? Like maybe not in direct correlation to what we've kind of been talking about, but just speaking in the guilt aspect. Is there is there anything that you feel like I'm still kind of trying to get past a little guilt I feel with this? Or do you feel like you're completely guilt free in this space you're in right now?
I'm not completely guilt free, but there's also not anything I can think of that like there's a thumb of guilt over me. Just
Mm,
somewhere like no. I mean, yeah, maybe if I choose to spend time or want to spend time with myself, because I my house has become like the Alpha House of Chicago. My house has become the Underground Railroad of my friends. It's become the bed and breakfast, but like my apartments have been like that. My life has been like that. So I'm like, okay, if I haven't seen person one in a month, I would like to see them. But then person two, I also haven't seen. I would like to see them too. Person three. So it's like I haven't seen individual people in a while. And then I put them in rotation to see them. And then I realized I've spent 6 days with somebody.
mm.
So like having to still take the conscious time just to be in my house by myself, no family, no friends, don't call me, don't text me, don't think about me. Like there's a uneasy navigation with that sometimes because I'm a social person. Like I want to be around people. I want to, excuse me, do those things, but then I'm just be like, I ain't got the capacity. My Energizer Bunny is gone. Like I ain't got it. So if I had to say anything that, but for real, no.
That's valid. That last part is something I've struggled with as well. Because famously, I like to consider myself an antisocial extrovert. But I I don't feel like I thrive off of it. Like I don't feel like I need it. I can be to myself. I enjoy being to myself, being locked in on my things, but there is a battery that being around the right social circles, like there
Mhm.
is a battery that puts in me that is extremely beneficial, mainly because a lot of what I love to do involves getting to know people on a level where like I understand them past the surface. So there's a battery in that where it's like, okay, I enjoy this. I'm getting something from this. It's fulfilling in some capacity. But that is a uneasy balance because sometimes it's like I cannot like there has to be a cap on that somewhere. There has to be a threshold of how much I give because naturally I am giving so much to the relationships, to trying to maintain them and keep things in motion that yeah, they gotta cry, gotta say uncle at some point in time. So, yeah, I
Let me
feel
ask you this. Do you know your love languages, like your top love language?
haven't taken the test in a while. If I'm remembering correctly, I think my top one is words of affirmation. I
Okay.
think. But what I've also, it's funny for a few years now, I've been saying this. I don't believe my biggest love language is one of the five, right? I think that my biggest love language is and I've always struggled to how to articulate to where I feel like it makes sense to other people, and maybe it won't. But my love language is being understood, right? So, like, by being understood in the sense of if you can take into account how I am and how I operate, it's not to say I can't be challenged, it's not to say I can't be held accountable, but if you can really understand and consider who I am, that you know me to be, and what that means and where I operate from, and if
Hmm.
you always approach me with that, that is a love language to me. Because I feel like everything from that now just becomes a conversation that we can have. And if we can work through that conversation, then we can figure whatever said thing is out. But that starts with the understanding and consideration. So I would say like that's my biggest get in the car. Uh, I would say that's my biggest love language. But like I
Okay.
said, from the five, if I can remember from the last time I took it, I think it's words of affirmation.
Okay. And like I said, I can see that for you. Mine is quality time. My number one is quality time. Every time I've taken it, it has been quality time. There has been some shifts. There has been some shifts in some of the other ones, but because my number one language is my number one love language, wow, words are just like mink, 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 just beat my ass. Um, Quality time is my number one love language. Because quality time is my number one love language, that means I really enjoy being with people, investing in other people, doing all of those things. I have to keep in mind that I also have to apply that quality time to myself.
Major.
Right. So that has been like the long way to answer your question. Like, I don't know that there's really any guilt still in that, but I can give time to them and I can give time to me just the same. It's just making the conscious effort to do so.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's real. Well, I'm glad to hear things are going really well for you, bro. Like I mean, we talked about like seeing versions of each other in a previous episode, and this version of you is I mean, I've always admired you and looked up to you, but seeing you get here and then seeing you explain how different being in this space for you is, even from what I thought you were doing, just kind of having a new perspective and seeing where you are now is like cool. Cool. I'm glad. Like it's another level of respect and admiration, I would say, for me. So that's cool, bro. I'm happy.
Oh,
Happy for you.
yeah, no, it's a new level of peace. I think that's what it is. And I have found peace in a way that I know it can stay.
Mm.
It's the other factors around it that I'd be like, what's about to happen? What's going on? But if the other shoe does drop or some other weird thing falls out the sky, I think I'm better equipped now more than ever to handle it. I don't want to handle it, but I think I can handle it and be okay and not in a way that would break me. So we good over here, man. I'm chilling.
I feel it. I love to see it. I'm getting there. I'm on the way. I feel like I'm on the way. I'm getting there. I'm gonna meet you at the mountaintop. Whatever I'm in, this too shall pass. Okay, enough of the church references. It's Sunday when we recording this. That's where it's all coming from. The Lord
Amen.
is the Lord is still within me. Amen. Amen. Hallelujah. But until next then, oh,
You want to try that one more time?
yeah. Until next episode, until next time. This is Thug Keith Lee signing off. Uh
And on that note, I have nothing.
and we'll catch y'all next time.